and today I have Daniel Smith from Park West. Welcome. I call you Danny.
I'll take it. That's fine.
Welcome, Danny. Great to see you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate this.
Great, great. Well, this is in connection with an article that we talked about a while
Hmm.
back. I mean, we couldn't remember the exact time that you and I did this, but why it's so special to me, and I'm sorry it took a long time to get it in our publication. It is coming out in our summer 2025 issue that
Okay.
is live online, but it's still at the printer and going through those things. Um, but it's about water management. And when you
Mhm.
and I had this conversation, I was like, oh my goodness, this is one of the reasons why Synced is here, and why what
Yeah.
I want us to help with is like all these different specialties in our industry, but there's a red thread through everything,
Mhm.
and water is like that red thread. So drum roll, why don't you tell us a little bit about, could you start with what your role used to be
Sure.
and how it evolved to director of technical ops at Part West, because I think that that's a critical part of the story too. So over to
Yeah.
you.
I'll start off with just saying it's been an incredible ride. I just celebrated my 36th birthday, and I'm 15 years in the industry, and it's been phenomenal. And I'm looking forward to what I've learned and now applying it over the next 20 plus years and applying it. So I came into Park West as an irrigation specialist. I helped define the role, created the water manager role, filled that role, and then I was a director of water management for I think about 6 years before I was offered the director of technical operations role. And so my passion has always been irrigation, particularly with water conservation or water management in mind.
Mhm.
But about 18 months ago, Park West gave me this higher capacity where instead of just one of the technical departments, which was water management, I was given then field performance, plant health, and graphics. And I took it as a challenge. I said, look, there's still so much to learn about ET-based programming and two-wire troubleshooting, and all of those are great, but I really want to understand more soil science and horticulture. And earlier this year, I became a certified arborist, because I wanted to understand trees better. And it's a lot funner
Yeah.
when I'm on the par three and saying, okay, I'm going to make sure I get right over next to that California pepper. But, like, and people don't understand that, I just love the landscape that's around me, and why not talk intelligently about it? But so now here I am, 18 months later, director of technical operations, and it's been a wild ride. So, Park West has over 550 properties: Southern California, Northern California, and Las
Wow.
Vegas. So different territories, different, it's not even
Different
microclimates. I mean,
requirements.
different,
Yeah.
different locations, entirely different locations. And I'm still jealous of the beautiful trees we have up in Northern California. We don't get them in SoCal. And I don't like gravel, so I go to Vegas and I get thirsty. Uh, so I'm trying to balance, how all of this how all of this works, and it's one thing just to learn our industry, but then how do we learn it, and then how do we apply it to all these challenges that we come across, and that's been the
Yeah.
most rewarding part of it.
Well, and it's great that you've started in like one niche and
Mhm.
that you've expanded out to, I mean, but you said graphics. What
So graphics,
that's
yeah,
what so
it,
irrigation, water management, plant health care, and
graphics,
graphics. So
yeah.
yeah,
So,
explain all the connections, please.
so graphics is actually very very impactful to us and our clients. We started off doing our own like base, what we call as a base map, and so we do an overview of an HOA or a shopping plaza, and we just identify the landscape area versus the non-landscaped area. And so that way we can build rotational maps, we can build mowing path of motions. We have maps that our graphics team will create of where the doggy stations are located, where the
Okay.
um, park benches, different operational needs that we have. We have some very detailed maps of where the mow crew parks and where do they refuel the vehicle, or where they rescue the mower, where do they dump their green waste, and we have everything
Okay.
mapped out from an efficiency standpoint that our
Okay.
field performance team creates. And so having them put together the plan and then graphics map it out, physically map the thing out, is incredibly successful. And so that way we can hand that map off to the foreman, the operations specialist, and say, hey, here's what needs to get done. Here's what we expect in this time frame to be done. And it's a beautiful thing. And that's like only the half of graphics is the maps. The other is the renderings. And I can try to sell what I can do to your corner entry or your monument or what have you, or I can just have my team do a very good before and after picture, and we can crop out
Mhm.
old plant material, incorporate new plant material, show the textures, show the colors. It's an easy discussion when the customer can really understand how that we're going to translate dollars into landscape, and that's what they
Mhm.
want to see.
And so, yeah, I mean, there's more to it. So you said graphics, but soils, plant
Oh yeah.
healthcare, all this. So how do you, how are you as a person, getting to know all of these details and weighing up everything? And do you want to give us an example maybe of a
Yeah, yeah.
site or
Oh, let's give you a good one. So, I wanted to learn about Atromech. I wanted to learn about plant growth regulators. If you're familiar with that, it's essentially something that can really change the way that we sell maintenance contracts.
yeah.
Ultimately, that the what we're trying to do is we're trying to sell manpower to be able to mow our lawns, cut our shrubs, and there's hours that are associated with that. And as our labor has continued to increase year over year, if
Yeah.
we're able to apply a chemical that can ultimately reduce the growth of that plant and reduce the frequency of that maintenance, it's money not just in our pocket, but it's money in our customer's pocket. And
Mhm.
when I took over the plant health department, I sat down. The beauty is in each of these departments, I'm not the SME. I know I'm not. I have SMEs. I have the subject matter experts, and I'm
Mhm.
just making sure that they stay on the programs, the processes, and ultimately it's these SMEs that are working for the account managers, the branch managers. And so I have plant. Maybe I should say, don't email these guys. Planthealth at parkwestinc.com. Um, our account managers, these are internal emails, people. But you can, hey, what's this plant? Or, hey, I think I have a disease here. Or, hey, I have chlorosis. I have a problem, so our account manager
Yeah.
can take a picture, email it internally, and our plant health will come back and say, yes, you need to do this. I'd recommend applying this at this rate. And so it just allows us to be very efficient, but very professional in the services that we provide our
Mhm.
customers. Um, Going back to this plant growth regulator, we wanted to see, although we don't have too much growth in terms of like volume of growth, like evergreen shrubs in the Las Vegas market, there are certain properties that could justify using plant growth regulator. And this is like your ligustrums, your
Yeah, the fast
pyracanthus,
growing.
all of your
Yeah.
shrubs that are still kind of focal, or I
Mhm.
would say more infill plant material. We still have our focals and what have you. And we tried applying plant growth regulator, Atromech, on the property, and the plants just did not respond to it. And so we're sitting there scratching our head, and we're contacting some of our distributors and our manufacturers, and we're trying to figure it out. And long story short, we found out that the water we were using to mix in the chemical, the pH was too high. And when the pH is too
Ugh,
high, it renders the product, not only is it useless, but it renders it very ineffective.
ineffective, yeah.
Ineffective. And so, who'd have thought that we have to go do water samples for what we're filling our tanks for? And so the
Yeah.
idea is that Trifle, which is the brand, it's a pH balancer. We'll call it a reducer, but it reduces the pH into the range that this chemical is now effective in. We
Mm.
apply it, it works, everybody wins. And so that's just one of the examples of me getting to understand the greater picture of
Yeah, the
technical
root
operations.
cause of why this isn't working because
Yep.
plant growth regulators can reduce waste,
Mhm.
reduce travel time.
Everything.
Yeah,
The carbon footprint on that is huge.
mm.
And so, yeah, if we can knock that down, we're in good shape.
Yeah. And, one of the things that kind of jumped out at me in the article, you talk about, you know, do we need irrigation everywhere, or do we have irrigation
Mhm.
everywhere? And if you don't, it doesn't mean that you can't plant there.
Right.
There's other options. So it's kind of understanding the next level of detail, like what
Yeah.
plant needs what, like right plant, right place, you know?
God, I mean, it sounds as simple as it is, but I learned it's not. But it can be done. I've seen, um, ultimately what they do for habitat restoration and,
Mhm.
when post fires happen and they need slope control. I would love to see our industry take hydroseeding to the next level, and not just for turf grass applications, but there's some really nice perennials, ground covers that we can build in these hydroseeding blends that can completely transform the property. And what we can do with that is, if we do apply it, maybe we have temporary irrigation, maybe we hope for Mother Nature and time it with her. But if we can do this and do it right, we could be looking at true regenerative type landscapes without that irrigation input.
Mhm, mhm. I'll have to point you to a podcast that I did with There's Now Turf for Meadows. So,
That's really neat. Yeah,
yeah,
that's really neat.
not yet in your area, but,
Yeah.
soon to come. But yeah, I think there's so many more solutions when it comes to erosion control that, again, we need to know about. That's
Mhm.
another problem that you need to incorporate into how you solve. We're really problem solvers for anything
Absolutely.
outdoors. Um, so looking at the site needs to take everything into account.
Mhm.
Um, what can happen whenever you scrape back the land, and
Well, and we're seeing that whether it was through a wildfire.
yeah,
I took my family through Central California last week, and I got to drive through not just Malibu, but the Palisades, and I got to drive through
okay.
what appeared to be. I mean, it was a fire zone, but it looked like a war zone, right? And
Oh,
to see what that looks like, I mean, it was incredible. It really was. But we looked at that rainfall that came in, so now we can look at mudslides, we can look at those. And
yeah,
that's kind of Mother Nature, and we got to play with that. But even then, wildfires generally, we're doing slope clearing. The amount of fuel modification that contractors are doing, particularly on the West Coast, but I'd imagine everywhere, and
mhm,
what we're trying to do to meet these new fire maps and fire codes and zone zeros. And there's so much noise on the fire risk prevention. As we go to clear out these property or these slopes, and these slopes have had acacia redolens out there for 35, 40 years,
mhm,
and deep root systems, and structurally sound, but then the plant material goes due to fire. We have to be mindful of that. And fortunately, we're not putting acacia redolens back in. We are looking at low boys, and we are looking at desert carpets and what have you. And so we're looking at better
okay,
options. Tecumarea is quite popular. Plumbago, not a fan of. But we are seeing those solutions. And so the innovation is there. Our industry does want to be innovative. We do have liabilities that as a contractor we have to worry about, but that's where I really want to make sure that our landscape architects, our designers, irrigation consultants, landscape contractors are having these conversations, talking about the good,
yeah,
the bad, what's working. In the article, we talked about not just inputs, but making sure that what we learned on the previous project moves forward to the next project. I think that's
yeah.
that's the key there.
I mean, it sounds so simple, some of these things, but it's harder the bigger the company.
Right.
And
Right.
I mean, I think it's hard when you're not in the same place as your teammates, and
Mhm.
and then the bigger the company, the harder it is. Um,
Very
what do
true.
you do as in your position to help that communication across these specialties, kind of like
Mhm.
I'm talking about, with synced again, like
Yes.
sometimes I find it hard to get people to want to talk to other specialties because it takes a different perspective. It's almost a mind shift that you have to
It,
have
it, it's
to,
for sure, and it's not just ego. It's not just I've been doing this for 25 years, don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
For me, it's just making sure that we set up the time for collaboration, and that's the way that we've structured, not just technical operations, but just how Park West is structured. There's no excuse not to call a local expert. There's no excuse as the
Okay.
as the account manager. You lead that landscape walk. You have a challenge. You have a problem. There's no reason not to call plant health. We have certified arborists on staff. I've got a PCA, not me. We have a PCA internally. We have QAL experts. We have all of the right staff on board, and so we just need to make sure that we're actually having those collaborations and we're having those discussions. And so I've challenged my plant health teams, my water management teams. They're in the weekly staff meetings. They're one phone call, one email away, and I am seeing the traffic, the noise, and that's
Good.
frankly, that's been the most rewarding part of my job. Is I used to be the guy getting the emails, and now I'll get off with you, and I look at 47 emails, but I'm like, wow, it's all emails here, and I get to be here, and so now I just get to see all this collaboration and all these discussions, and
Yeah.
hey, thanks Robert, hey, thanks Sean, appreciate that. Like that's how we're winning,
Well, and that's culture. I mean, so I
right?
think that that says a lot about the company and what work you're doing to
Mhm,
get people to talk. Because you're right, it's about taking time out. I mean,
mhm.
everybody's out of time. Everybody's rushed. I'm looking outside and it's pouring down rain, and like that just puts other pressures on you.
Oh
Your
yes.
your time is compressed. Um, to take time out to do something that seems like, you know, extra, or
Mhm.
can be so valuable though. Um,
Yeah,
it's
just
working
trying
smarter.
to, yeah, well, trying to conduct training. We have everything from the 30-minute, hey, here's a quick, verb on this, or hey, here's a new plant that's available, all the way up to, multi-day training programs that we conduct internally. And I always try to tell my branch managers, my account managers, like, I know it's June. I know what I'm asking for. I get it. I understand. But I assure you, it will. I use the word dividends a lot. There are dividends to this. You are going to see the value of this. And so, what was my most recent training? We did some. I'll name drop. Doesn't hurt anybody. Hydropoint, one of my favorite controller manufacturers. So we had some of their teams coming in the Spanish language and teach my technicians in July, and that's not,
Awesome.
or it's late June, early July, and that's frankly unheard of. I got a lot of pushback, but I'm like, guys, but we want to make sure our guys know how to use this technology correctly. We got to make sure we reduce our work orders, our alarms. We got to do this. So we're going to do this.
Make the time
Yeah.
and learn it. And yeah, I mean, that is inherent in our industry, that we're either stressed or bored. And,
Ain't that the truth? Yeah. Yeah.
like in the
Yeah.
wintertime, or
Well,
or vacation time, everybody takes off for July and like,
back
okay.
in the day, we had these things called seasons, and
Yeah.
they actually meant something. I remember, we'd overseed it, I think it was October, and now we're like, well, we can't really overseed because the turf hasn't gone dormant yet. Or we can't do this activity, or we have no January, February rains in SoCal anymore. So we're like, well, do we apply, pre-emergent or whatever in March, or do we not? Do we, because a lot of this is
It's a
granular.
juggle.
And so if we don't time
Mhm.
it with rainfall, we're not getting the proper applications. We're not getting
Is
the
it gonna
penetrations
work?
we need. And
Yeah.
and talk about wasteful inputs.
Yeah.
Those are big
Yeah. If you have to put it down a couple times when you only
for it to be
budgeted one
effective.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I know it is crazy. And I mean, just talking about the fires and then the subsequent mudslides,
Hmm.
that's another thing that you can't really plan for, and you have to consider, what the ground is experiencing, and it's all destabilizing from the
Well,
plant
and
material
whether we're
going.
waiting for the insurance check, or
Yeah.
the time of, just from a labor standpoint, a lot of the HOAs aren't understanding, what do they want to do, and no fault to really anybody else, but we're still not very uniform on what plants we should be putting in on these slopes. What is
Yeah.
firescape plants. What does that actually mean? And we get, I wouldn't say contradictory information, but we get mixed information. We get a lot of
Mhm.
opinions in the entire definition of fuel modification. And when we're talking clearing slopes and big properties in projects that are well over, $100,000, we want to make sure that we're very clear on what's expected of us by the local fire authority to be compliant. And it's not
Mhm.
just to be compliant when we do the task, but then to make sure that we maintain compliance. And so, it might be, no higher than 24 inch and it has to be living. And then it goes, well, we changed it to 12 inches. And like, well, if we take out, 12 inches, or we take that acacia down to 12 inches, it ain't going to survive. So now we're having to rip out that acacia. And so that changes
Oh,
the entire scope
goodness.
of the project.
Well, and I mean, this goes for a lot of things in the industry. We're still learning so much, like, I mean, you talked about plant growth regulators.
Mhm.
Um, right plant, right place is kind of hard to do when there's microclimates,
Oh yeah.
when the USDA hardiness map has changed recently,
Mhm.
and we're also learning a lot about native plants too.
Yeah.
So you talked about native plants in your article. Is that something that you guys are installing quite a lot of, or is it in pockets? What's your
It's
strategy with
it's
that?
it's pockets. It's not enough. The first pain point that I saw is people think it's ugly, and more
Mhm,
times than not, it's pretty darn ugly. It's woody. It's got maybe a 4 to 8 week bloom, and so we
mhm,
get a couple of weeks where it looks great. Otherwise, it's just doing the native thing, right? And then if it's truly a native, it needs establishment water, but it doesn't need ongoing water, and so
mhm.
do we actually put a temporary system in? Do we get a water truck? How do we actually truly establish a native plant? And then, right or wrong, we just don't have the volume of plants that we actually need, native plant offerings. We have a local
Mhm.
nursery that is shutting down at the end of this year that is a native plant nursery. And I know your big guys, your big nursery firms are doing their best just to stock these and to see what works, but mortality rate is much higher. The
Mhm.
volume issues that I mentioned, and then again, whether how do I go and tell them, hey, I'm going to install a $30,000 irrigation system for a year, and then I'm going to take it out? Like, well,
Yeah,
what are you going
I
to do
don't
with
think
it?
that's
I don't
gonna
know.
I don't
I
think
can't
that'll
sell it to the
fly.
next guy, so I guess I'm gonna go stick it in my yard, But so there's still a lot of pain points on that front. But um,
Well,
the
and I
good
think
news.
some plant breeders are trying to, instead of, taking ornamentals and breeding them for more drought resistance.
Mhm.
And I think that, helps.
I wouldn't say
Is
it's hybrid is not the scientific term, but yes,
New
trying to figure out what really
varieties
makes sense
are
for us. And
helpers.
I'm in a little bit of a interesting market, California, with MWELO, Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance.
Mhm,
If you guys don't know, if you're on the West Coast, because I know Colorado's starting to incorporate language that mimics MWELO, but if you guys aren't
mhm,
familiar with that ordinance, highly suggest you look into it, because that is dictating what new developments look like, and it's basically a clever balance of crop coefficiency or basically irrigation need, plant water need of the plant material, and then the irrigation efficiency that of the irrigation system to be installed.
okay.
And basically, the higher water use plant, the more efficient that irrigation system must be. The lower the water use, yes, you can get away with it, with having a spray head with a rotary nozzle, a high efficiency nozzle. But if you want to put in a medium water shrub or anything like, say a zero point 0.4 or 0.5 crop coefficiency, about 50% of what water turf needs, your drip line. Your either point source or your line source
Mm,
drip line, and that's all you can play with. And you
okay.
know, in my article, I do mention there's value to drip line. The stucco deterioration, slurry seals, all of those are valuable. My concern, and it's pretty early, and I understand I'm pretty early on this, but what does drip line do to our soils in 20, 30 years? Will drip line, the material, will it break down? Will it get into our soils? I mean, microplastics, and I know it's most of it's already recycled material as it is. but we don't always rip out drip line when it goes bad. Sometimes it's subsurface, so when these
Mhm.
guys are burying it 8 inches below and it fails at year 10, naturally, useful life, all that good stuff, are we actually ripping that drip line out, or are we going to
Mm.
abandon in place? And if we abandon drip line in place in 30, 40, 50 years from now, that doesn't make me feel pretty good. I'm not really
Yeah.
happy about that.
Yeah. Well, and microplastics are a hot topic right now,
I hear you.
and um, in our food, in our
Mhm.
bodies. So it's worth. Yeah, I guess right now we don't know
We
a
don't
lot
know.
of things, but we're finding this out, and now that we know this, we do need to think longer term for anything that we're doing in the landscape.
Mhm.
I mean, I see it just from just the level of, and I'm looking out my window right here, but like, the water on the hardscapes
Mhm.
that deteriorates a hardscape, shoots the water off down the storm drains into the Gulf of Mexico or into the Mississippi River into the Gulf of
Sure.
Mexico. So we're shooting water off, and then we have dry soil
Mhm.
on around all the plants,
Yep.
so, like, those kind of things drive me crazy too. Like, we have excess water, and I'm in Louisiana, I'm fortunate with a lot of rain, but,
Right. Right.
sorry, the opposite problem that you have, but
I get maybe 7 inches if I'm lucky now a
yeah,
year.
yeah,
So
I think we got more than that in May. Um, but, we're shooting off this precious resource, and then and, you know, our
the
plants don't have
water.
enough water, so
Right. The water districts, your counties, your states, they understand groundwater pretty well at the macro level. Um, I think there's still a lot to learn at the micro level. What I'm seeing is, yes, I mean, I love driving through like Scottsdale, Arizona, where I see all the depreciated landscape areas, and so they know when they get
okay,
the storms in, they want to keep their
hold
water in
it.
place, and so
Yeah.
making sure that we incorporate watershed features and understanding the difference between permeable and non-permeable.
Yes.
When we're doing all this turf removal, non-functional turf, AB 1572 in California, if it's irrigated with potable water and it meets a certain definition of non-functional, it's got to go in the next 3 to 4 years.
Hmm.
And we did a lot of the agencies, we were looking at doing artificial turf, and we're like, okay, that's bad, don't do that. And so they pulled that off of the allowable replacement of live turf. But now we're starting to see, well, is DG okay? Well, DG, whether it's stabilized or not, does not have anywhere close to the infiltration rate of either bare soil, mulch, or turf. And if you really look at
Ah,
turf has an incredible infiltration rate. It takes that rainfall, it takes that irrigation, wicks it through the thatch, brings it into our soils. It's a beautiful thing. And whether we're putting in mulch back, shrubs and mulch to replace the turf, we're putting in DG. But sometimes we don't, when we take the turf out, we keep that nice round hump. Right. So now we're
yeah.
creating a watershed issue. So,
Yes.
how do I go to my customer and go, yeah, I'm going to cost more money to do this turf removal project, but I'm actually going to remove cubic feet of dirt to create a depression. I'm going to
And
help.
pay the waste and yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
it's gonna cost more money.
Well,
Yeah.
but I'm going to keep my water in my landscape. I'm going to keep my nutrients in my landscape. I'm going to keep my landscape in my landscape. I'm not going to push stuff
Yes.
out down the Mississippi.
Well, and I think, we're also, if you look at our soil health around the world, really, not just the US, but um, all these things have degraded our soil quality.
Mhm.
So keeping water where it lands, is a great philosophy.
Mhm.
Um, but it has to be in the design and construction phase or enhancement phase, and it does cost more. So
Absolutely.
so I guess, it seems like there's so much to unpack here. We could talk about this for days. Let's kind of wrap it up and and I'll put the link to the article in the show notes so people can read more. But what would be your advice if someone is in another company, maybe they don't have the resources that Park West have, and you want to encourage them to think differently about water? What would you,
Wow.
is there something that you would
I'll be honest with
recommend?
you. I think the best thing for someone who doesn't have the resources at hand, artificial intelligence, the amount of information
Mm,
that the AI actually has available to us. If you really understand, let's pick on Chat GPT, but if you understand how what you're asking it can change what's given back to you, if you truly understand what your prompts look like and what your end goal is, you can walk AI into a corner that you don't want to be in, and that's kind of your own doing. But if you open up the right questions, and if you ask, hey, why should I put this plant here? Or if I have this microclimate and I have this much rainfall
mm,
over this period of time, what plant would do this best? Like, there
yeah,
is enough information out there that these AIs can capture that can provide you some really good solutions. And so, everything from how long should I, cook my spaghetti for, to what kind of
like a spaghetti,
infiltration rate I
what?
can expect on my clay loam soil at a certain compaction.
I was gonna say,
I've
you need to know more about your soil. You
Yes,
might need to do some testing of your soil, how readily it drains, and but yeah, put a lot of that technical detail,
yeah.
give it the the knowledge
Well,
to
and so
put
let's make it even an
yeah.
easier one. So before you go into AI, because we all want to have foundational knowledge prior, um, do you have, and I'm asking the people listening here, do you have a source to test your water and soil? Do you have, I'll name drop Ag Source, we use them. But if you really look at the cost of getting your water tested and your soil tested, it's actually quite cheap. Some of
Mm,
these bigger firms, you can call them, they'll send you a kit, they'll send you the bags, they'll send you the
okay.
bottles, and it's all, pre shipping labels and all that good stuff. And so you figure out, and whether you pass the cost on to the client or not is up to you. But what you can get back in a water sample and a soil sample in terms of your nutrients, I should say, what's
Mhm.
available in your soil, is huge. And we've
And
learned
also
that
how
there.
effective the plant growth regulator
Oh,
is, like the
absolutely
example
right.
that you
Whether
said.
that works or not. Um, but you can go, okay, well, this plant, it requires more of an acidic soil, or this plant needs well drained soil. There are compaction, tensionometers that you can purchase, soil probes you
Mhm.
can purchase.
There's also
We
universities that
Oh,
will
absolutely.
you can lean on too, and they may have somebody that can come out and help.
Mhm.
So,
There's some really awesome landscape architects out there. We've retained a few to come in and teach us. We had a huge sustainability workshop back in, I want to say it was March of this year. I'll name drop her because she deserves the credit. Jody Cook she's out of
okay.
San Juan Capistrano. Phenomenally intelligent woman. I think she teaches at the local college as well. But teaching us about regenerative landscape and allelopathy and how our soils work, how our soils break down with plant materials, how we can have succession in our landscapes.
Oh,
There's
good.
so much there that we can unpack. And yeah, between that, understanding the science between our soils and what our water quality looks like, and then maybe a sprinkle of AI in there, we'd be in a better shape.
Oh, Danny, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks for joining us. I know
Of
you're
course.
really busy. Um, happy recent birthday too.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
and always good chatting with you. So yeah, thanks for educating our audience and telling your story. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
Thanks, Danny. Bye.